Just one more moment. Will I get this? Okay. And we're live. So welcome everybody to the scheduled program today at COP30 in Belém, Brazil. For those of you who are regular joiners to the program, you know that we're actually live on the ground here at COP30 to provide your daily briefing, as well as to showcase you the footage of what's happening here on the ground. Part of our team is Dr. Esteban Rodafili and Jeffrey Dismukes, who will be joining us as well. We actually have a special guest today that we'll open with, who is a wonderful mayor and whom I've had the pleasure of meeting multiple times as a PhD student in Gainesville. That's Mayor Harvey Ward. Mayor Ward leads the city of Gainesville, home to the University of Florida, and is one of the most innovative, sustainably driven cities in the U.S. Under Mayor Ward's leadership, Gainesville has advanced bold climate action, and we're here to talk to Mayor Ward today about some of the more important issues on local government and how local government can advance on climate and sustainability actions, even if at the state and national levels there isn't so much action. So Mayor Ward, welcome so much to our program today.
Thank you. Glad to be with you.
Okay, so our first question is from Maria, who suggests that COP30 is placing more pressure on countries to invest in adaptation. What does adaptation look like for local government? Specifically, talk about flooding, heat waves, infrastructure, and/or public health, or any other comments you have.
So, great question. We certainly at local government level don't have the luxury of putting this off until a more convenient time. We know that we have to adapt to not only what we perceive as future issues, but current issues. We see storms are more intense. We know that rain events are, if not bringing a more average rain, at least bringing a higher intensity of rain event. And that means we have to adjust our infrastructure. We have to storm drains that were engineered and designed 75, 100 years ago for the level of water falling back then don't work with today's severe rainfalls. And so those, as we redesign and plan our cities, we have to think differently about all of that. We've for many years been working toward sustainability in our built infrastructure, particularly with city buildings, and have recently received Gold LEED standard, and very, very proud of that. Our team has worked hard to be recognized for the work, but the real recognition comes from buildings that are more sustainable, that cost us less to run, that are less resource intensive overall. A thing that we have been working on that we'll be working on for another 10 or 20 years that I think will pay real dividends is making a real effort to buy property on the shores of our creek system. We have an extensive creek system, waterway system throughout the city, and we know that there are going to be more flood events in neighborhoods that border those creeks. So we have a fairly extensive tree mitigation fund. Whenever a developer wants to build somewhere that includes taking down high quality trees, it's very expensive to do so, and the expense for that then goes into our tree mitigation fund, which we primarily use to buy high quality conservation land, and with a special interest toward doing that along the creek system, so that we can turn that property into trails and other public health and transportation functions, but also to make sure that we have control over areas that are likely to flood, rather than leaving those in the buildable environment.
Absolutely true. Our next question comes from Tyler. Thank you so much for joining us, Tyler. So, Tyler says that Gainesville has its own municipal utility and recently won a local election in which the municipal utility is returned now to the Gainesville, the city of Gainesville. What is that action going to empower the city to accelerate decarbonization efforts as compared to regional or governor controlled municipality or municipal utilities?
So that still kind of remains to be seen. We did win a local election overwhelmingly. 75 more than 75% of voters said that they would like to see local control over our local utilities. But the issue is tied up in appellate court right now. We Every time we win an election, this is the second time in a row that we've won over 70% on this issue, but we continue to be sued by the governor's controlled board. Let's assume that it comes back to the community. Let's assume that elected leaders are once again in charge of our local utility. If we were to do that, we would first of all uh, go back to using what is a very efficient, locally sourced fuel for a biomass plant that we own, which is not the most sustainable thing in the world, but it's a whole lot more sustainable than fossil fuels. Currently, most of the energy that our local utilities use is the fuel for the energy, rather, it comes from natural gas. I don't think that's a very good idea. So it would be very simple for us to go back to using our biomass plant, the fuel for which we source from within a 75-mile radius of Gainesville, primarily sort of waste wood and or storm debris that we had been using before to power that plant. Uh, and all of that storm debris or waste wood ends up usually being burned in a trash dump or being burned in a field. So it's going to get burned anyway. The question is, do we want to capture the energy that comes from burning that and use it to power our city, or do we want to just let it be burned when it's convenient by folks in the field? I think the answer is obvious. We would also pretty much immediately seek out opportunities to partner on a utility scale solar local builds. We had done that previously before the utility was taken out of our hands, and we were ready to move forward with a 74.9 megawatt solar farm adjacent to the city that we would have been able to use to probably power about 10% of our total need, which is something the community is very supportive of, and that I would like to think we will find a way to get back to.
Very good. Thank you so much for that answer. You have a great reputation of incorporating and involving youth in your decision-making processes, especially because the University of Florida is there. And one question that we have, again, from Maria, is that the youth presence at COP30 is enormous from all the pictures that I've seen. What do you see as the role of young people, especially as the mayor, in shaping local climate policy?
So it's important that we hear from all our constituents. In Gainesville, we are consistently one of the youngest per capita cities in Florida, primarily because of the University of Florida. Um, so we lean to a younger audience. We want to hear from everyone, regardless of age and years of experience. But I know that Gen Z is far better informed on climate issues because you realize that this is a problem you're hopefully going to be living with, and you're going to be responsible for whatever my generation, Gen X or Boomers, leave behind when we're done. And Gen Z has done a great job of informing itself about what the issues actually are and what the alternatives are, and the directions that we can take in a way that, frankly, your elders have not done a good job of. Which is not to say the Boomers and Gen Xers and Millennials don't care. We've we've done some research. We just haven't committed the way that it's necessary. I believe it is absolutely necessary, not only from an ability to live and thrive scientific side of things, but also economically. You know, there has long been the idea that we can't do solar; it's too expensive. We can't do this. We can't do that. It's too expensive. Too expensive to be to plan for resiliency. Well, it's unbelievably expensive to not do that. If we don't invest in the best time to have invested in any of these technologies was 20 or 30 years ago. Al Gore was right. He was very specific and he was correct on all of his recommendations. But we didn't do it then in the real kind of way that we needed to. So the second best time to do it is now because it will only become more expensive to have not taken the measures that were obvious that needed to be taken.
Absolutely
I
true.
hope
Mhm.
that's a good answer there. Yeah.
It's a fantastic answer, and it leads to a very interesting point that we've spoken of multiple times on this channel, which is had we successfully addressed climate change in 1993 when the Kyoto Protocols are first being discussed, we would have had to spend at most $2 trillion globally worldwide to solve the climate issue back then. Today, as we know, any of the most conservative models suggest that we'd be spending 1.5 trillion per year as just the United States in order to address the climate crisis issue. And that's, again, the most conservative estimates. Um, However, I do have two more questions. One is going to be from Dr. Rotofili, who is a recent graduate of the University of Florida. But before we get to his question, we do have one that is actually tied in with COP30's recent declaration today. And Jennifer says, today at COP30, Brazil launched the Global Information Integrity Declaration. And just for those of you who are unaware, the Information Integrity Declaration was signed by over 30 countries to combat climate misinformation. There was no financing attributed to it, but this declaration is by some of the largest countries in the world. Noticeably absent, of course, is the USA. How do you, Mayor Ward, think that local government should respond to climate misinformation within their communities?
So we should respond to climate misinformation the way we should respond to all misinformation and call it out as a lie. I am I have no qualms when we are presented with misinformation, with lies, with calling it out and saying that is incorrect. That's a thing that we do pretty regularly at public comment at our meetings. When someone says something that is incorrect, I will gently say, I'm not sure that's accurate, and that is not something that the city of Gainesville endorses. And if it is a straight up lie, I will call it a straight up lie. There, I understand if someone is misinformed. I can work with them and gently try to walk a good path with them back to the right side of the truth. But if someone has malicious intent with misinformation, lies, we should absolutely call them out. And at the City of Gainesville, we make every effort to do that.
Thank you very much. Our last question today is going to be from Dr. Rotofili. So, Esteban, I'll hand it off to you.
Hello, Mayor
Hello,
Ford.
Mayor
Thank you
Ward.
so much
Thank
for
you
Hello.
so
coming.
much for
And
coming.
I was
And I
an
was
international
an
student
international
at
student
UF.
at
I was
UF. I
chief
was
organizer
chief
for
organizer for
GAU,
GAU,
and I had a
and I had a
wonderful
wonderful
time in your
time in
city,
your
in the
city, in the
Thank you.
community.
community you built.
So my question
So my
is,
question is,
looking at the
looking at the
long-term
long-term
future,
future,
the
the
cities
cities
of
of
Florida
southern
will have
Florida will
a
have
much
a much
tougher
tougher
time dealing
time
with
dealing
climate
with
change.
climate
The
change. The
reliance
reliance
on
on
modified
modified
terrain
terrain
far
is
more than
far
the
more than
cities of
the
northern
cities of
Florida.
northern Florida.
So
So
effectively, we could see
effectively, we could see
change
a change
going back to the
going
old
back to the
days
old
and
days
having
and
the main
having the main
population
population
centers and
centers and
economy
economy
in northern
in
Florida.
northern Florida.
Um, in
Um,
that case,
in that
Gainesville
case,
will be at
Gainesville
the
will be at the
forefront of the
forefront
state,
of the
and
state, and
beyond
beyond
preparing for
preparing for
climate change,
climate change,
how should
how should
Gainesville also
Gainesville also
prepare
prepare
for
for
probably an
probably
increase
an
in
increase
size and
in size and
population?
population?
So it's a real challenge because as reasonable as most of our city is regarding climate issues, when we have honest conversations about the fact that people are already moving inland and upland to places like Ocala, Gainesville, Lake City, Tallahassee, um, when we are presented with the reality of that and the truth that it is almost certainly going to increase exponentially, it is hard for a lot of folks to say, okay, that means we're going to have to build higher buildings, but we're going to have to provide more capacity for density in the urban core and even stretching out from the urban core. That is uncomfortable for a lot of people, but it is the reality. From an infrastructure standpoint, we are, I think, as prepared as we could be, and we have tried over the last several years to prepare our load for those realities. But it is still going to be a shock to the system. We do not have things like light rail. We are not prepared to invest in light rail and that sort of thing. So we are going to see heavier traffic from surface level roads, which is going to disappoint a lot of people. But the truth is, if we have the money that we have to spend on infrastructure, we probably need to be spending on more specific, resiliency than thinking out two things like light rail. Although that is something that 20 years from now we will have been glad that we had done if we were to do it, to torture the language a little there. But it is a reality. It is coming. It is hard to imagine that that our coastal cities will look anything like they do in in probably 10 years. But when we look 20 and 30 years out, um, counties like Pinellas County, St. Petersburg, Clearwater, Tampa, Hillsborough County, all of the coastal areas to the south along the Gulf of Mexico, and of course, east and west of the Everglades, they're going to be wet. They just will, and that means people are going to leave there. They're not. I hear people occasionally discussing, ways to try to fight to keep the sea out, as Amsterdam has done for a very long time. We have a different topography here. The water is going to come up from underneath as much as it does from the sea itself. So it isn't the kind of flooding you can really fight. You can't just pump it all back out. You can't put up seawalls to keep it all out. So that means people are going to leave, and they're likely to come to the middle and northern part of the state. We all kind of know it's going to happen, but to say that we're prepared is not accurate.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Well, thank you so much, Mayor Ward, for joining us today on our program. I know there's a lot of questions left to the chat for all of you. We hope to have Mayor Ward back on the program at some point in the future, but please do send them in. And we're very grateful for our student response to having you on board, Mayor Ward, and of course you as well. So thank you again for joining us in today's program.
Thank you for the invitation.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Now, next up on our program today, we're going to be going over the updates from COP30 over here in Belém, Brazil. So, without further ado, okay, for those of you who are just joining us in the middle here, we had our segment where we discussed or we had Mayor Ward join us today for our daily briefing. But for those of you who are unfamiliar with our program, joining us for the first time, our mission is to empower students through sustainability action. Our activities at COP30 are to observe, to analyze, and to represent. To observe, because we are an observer organization, we do not take direct part in the negotiations, but we do interact with the delegates who do. Therefore, the best that we can do is to analyze the events taking place at COP30 to represent the students who are students who are here on the ground and those who are at home, and to actually represent them at the climate conference. Each day throughout COP30, we'll go over our daily program, which will be live at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. These are student-led broadcasts. Today at COP30 was Health Day, and the Belém Health Action Plan was signed. Essentially, this was a group of most of the folks who are signatories of the Paris Climate Accords who signed on to ensuring that our health systems become more climate resilient. So this involves better disease surveillance, stronger local health capacity, and innovation to protect communities from heat, floods, smoke, etc. Health has been one of the largest discussions at COP30, mostly because as climate change advances quite rapidly, our ability to respond to all the health concerns is woefully behind. However, during the COP30 discussions today, it won political backing from almost everybody. However, not one discussion was held on how we would finance this declaration or this health plan, which again falls into many of the same problems that we have across the spectrum, across the board, which is political backing is everywhere. Financial backing is not there so much. People are not willing to finance or put their money where their mouth is on these issues. There's been also a lot of indigenous presence and social justice concerns, and you're going to see some pictures from Jeffrey Dismukes, who was actually on the ground and actually captured quite a bit of the local activity at the event. However, we did note that there is about 2,500 Brazilian indigenous participants at COP30, which is a huge amount. About 14% of them, or actually only about 14% of those groups or those individual participants are actually getting into the key decision-making processes, which means that activists will continue to push for direct financing for these indigenous communities and stronger recognition of land rights as central to these climate solutions. Today, also, there was a declaration on misinformation. A coalition of about 11 countries led by Brazil launched a declaration on climate misinformation. Essentially, this was a pledge to tackle disinformation that undermines all of our climate actions across the world and to defend reliable climate information online and in the media. During this session, I actually attended, there was a huge emphasis on AI misinformation, which was a key target of those discussions. This new declaration is essentially a political commitment by governments to strengthen what they call as information integrity within the climate space. Like the health declaration, it's not a binding treaty, but essentially put forward as a framework based upon 3 pillars. The first is recognizing that misinformation itself is a climate risk amplifier. The ability to combat misinformation and actually get folks on board the right path is essential, especially for delay of action. Second is defending access to science-based climate information, and third is coordinating action against organized disinformation campaigns. Okay, and with that being said, I will actually go ahead and turn this over to Esteban. So give me just a moment as I have him do our next segment today. He's going to share some interviews that he was able to secure. So Esteban, I will go ahead and give you the floor.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Let me share my screen and not to show too many spoilers. Let's go with an interview with Nyla Oliver. She's the Director of Sustainability for the city of Savannah, Georgia.
And
And there you have it, folks. A pretty ambitious program by Naila Oliver for the city of Savannah, Georgia. And just to keep us on the same subject of urban planning, today I had an interview with an external affairs director of the Ministry of Cities, which called our attention initially because we tend to think of cities as something local. But Brazil thinks differently and has a federal Ministry of Cities. Let's listen to the interview to find out why they decided to do this.
And
there we have it. Content about cities and interviews feeding our guests for today. With that, I'll turn it back to Rock.
Thank you so much, Esteban, for that
You're
wonderful presentation. Okay, let's go ahead and very good. Okay, next on our segment is going to be Jeff, who's going to go over some of the images that he saw today on the ground. So if you just give me a moment while I pull up the content for today.
You seem frozen.
Okay.
You feel more here.
So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Jeffrey. So Jeff, I'll turn it over to you. You just hit the play button on there and I'll help you navigate to the next image.
Okay. So as Rock kind of teased, I was focusing today on some protesting that was done in the blue zone that was actually permitted. As Rock said, there are
on Zoom.
Yes.
Oh, there's no Zoom.
There are 2,500 attendees that were allowed into the blue zone that are indigenous peoples, and they've been throwing spontaneous protests throughout the day in a small area where they were allowed to protest. And what I witnessed was a protest from for a future without fossil fuels, because that is one of the main complaints from the indigenous peoples, is that Brazil is actually increasing fossil fuel extraction and taking indigenous lands in order to do that. So I'll play some of these videos.
E eu peço aqui mais uma vez, demarcação! Demarcação!
And so basically what's happening is whereas Brazil has since the election of President Lula, they have decreased deforestation by 50%, and they've also decreased emissions by 16%. But on the other side of the coin, they have increased oil extraction by more than 40%. And in fact, Brazil is now one of the fourth leading countries in the world, the US being the top, along with Iraq and Russia, as countries who have actually increased the extraction of fossil fuels since the signing of the Paris Climate Agreement. And in fact, if we took away these four countries, we would have a net decrease in fossil fuel extractions over the last 10 years. But unfortunately, these four countries have greatly increased their extraction, leading to a fairly large net increase in fossil fuel extraction since the Paris Climate Agreement. So these protests were really about the fact that not only is the Amazon region being polluted and these people's lands are being taken away, but it is also adding to the crisis that these people are dealing with on a daily basis. And again, as we've said before on this program, it is the indigenous populations who are dealing with the front lines of this crisis on a day-to-day basis. They're actually seeing the changes. And in the last 10 years, the changes that they've seen have just been incredible. And they're finding it very hard to continue their normal lifestyles. We had a great prayer from one of the chiefs, which was very moving. But in general, there was a lot of anger and a lot of disenfranchisement, and that is what's been showing up here at this COP the whole time. Whereas this is the Amazonian COP, it's also supposed to be the COP of truth. And the protesters here have been pretty vehemently saying that the truth is not being told, because the truth is that we are still extracting fossil fuels. And as long as we keep extracting fossil fuels and taking people's land to do so and endangering the environment of both the ocean and the land, then we're really not making any progress towards what's happening. Tomorrow, I will actually have an interview with the Renewable Energy Hub here, and we're looking at some really hopeful progress in Latin America, to be honest, thanks to very inexpensive technology being provided mainly from China that is allowing the developing countries to greatly outpace the rest of the world in going to renewable energy sources and clean energy sources. Thank you very much.
Okay. For those of you who are attending our broadcasts, whether you are in Gainesville or anywhere across the USA or even anywhere across the world, I noticed that we have some attendees from Brazil last night. So if wherever you're joining us, we're so incredibly grateful to have you on board with our daily program here at the Campus Climate Corps Daily Briefing. So if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, as usual, please feel free to submit them to our email, to our website. And without further ado, we will close out the program today, and we will see you on the next one. So